In a shocking turn of events, it seems like Auston Matthews is going to be returning to the lineup according to top reporters Elliot Freeman and Chris Johnson. This is very surprising as reports before were saying that he wasn't going to return, and this kind of changes everything for the Leafs going into tonight's game. So I'm going to break that down in this episode. But before we do, quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. If you are part of that 80% who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that button. It would mean the world to Darius and I as we produce daily Leafs content, and hopefully the Leafs can continue this deep playoff run. Darius, we recorded a few hours ago, and everything was pointing to Auston Matthews not returning tonight and maybe even not returning into the next series if they win. And then as we got closer to game time, we heard some rumblings from Paul Bissonnette saying, hearing rumblings, the core four will be assembling tonight. And then that turned into now, as we're about a couple hours before puck drop, Auston Matthews arrived with the first bus of teammates for Game 7 in Boston, intensifying the belief he is an option for tonight. And there was another report, which I'll show you in a second. But Darius, this is very, very interesting. And this kind of changes the whole outlook for not only tonight's game, but going forward, but the lines especially to see, which we'll give you some mock lines in a minute here, but very surprising.
Yeah, really surprising. And honestly, like you said, we just made a video about the fact that it did not look like he was going to play. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it looks like he's very likely to play. Like he's on the bus, which usually only transports the starters to the arena. And that was first reported, or I shouldn't say first reported, but we first got word of it through Biz. And obviously, Biz is very well connected. So you kind of have to have some belief there. And obviously, he used hashtag BLeaf, of course, Game 7. Everyone wants the Leafs to win. But then it was reported by Elliot Friedman, Chris Johnson, that the Boston media was starting to say that Auston Matthews was on the bus. It looks like he might be playing, or at least a possibility. There's still the possibility that he doesn't play and he just takes warm up. We've seen it time and time again, but all signs are kind of pointing to now he's going to play and he's a game time decision. So it's going to be really exciting if he gets into the lineup. And we've heard everyone, what everyone's been saying the last couple of days, that don't insert him into the lineup. Don't change anything. Listen, Auston Matthews makes your team better. I don't care what team you are. He automatically makes your team better. You just have to continue to play with the same intensity that you have the last couple of games. That doesn't change inserting somebody into the lineup. You have to bring the intensity, and I think adding Matthews just adds another weapon. So hopefully he does play. This has been an interesting turn of events.
Yeah, very surprising. And again, you started with Paul Bissonnette. You can see the most recent report from Chris Johnson about 10 minutes ago saying it sounds like Auston Matthews is obviously a good bet to return to the Leafs lineup. And that obviously started with him getting on the bus to the game. But now, Darius, the question is, and we can get into it now, we discussed it earlier, obviously, his performance this playoff has been a bit lackluster. Obviously, he's the Leafs' best player, but looking at the lineups now, you suggested this, and I think a week ago, before he even was kind of debating returning, about maybe shifting him in, not a week ago, a few days ago, shifting him into that third line to not mess with the kind of makeshift top couple of lines that Sheldon Keefe has been going with over the past two games that have allowed them to come back in this series and force the Game 7 tonight. What are your thoughts on these lines here? Obviously, Bertuzzi, Domi, Marner, Nyes, Tavares, Nylander, and Matthews on the third line between Robertson and Holmberg. This would keep the top two lines that have been makeshift going while also not disrupting, again, what has been the complete revelation and turning point for the Toronto Maple Leafs so far.
Yeah, he hasn't been great, like you mentioned, in these playoffs. But again, game 1 was a bit of a wash. They lost 5-1. Game 2, he had that great play where he scored and he was in on every goal. You move to game 3, he's playing through an illness. Game 4, he's injured and playing through illness, and he hasn't played since. So I'm going to cut him a little bit of a break. I think he can be a difference maker, but we don't know what percentage of Auston Matthews we're getting either. But to get to the lines, I think it's exactly kind of what we're going to be looking like if he does play. So or I think it's at least close, because I wouldn't change up any of the lines that are playing well together. Finally, Nyes is going, playing with Tavares, Nylander. I wouldn't mix that up. That makeshift first line, I wouldn't mix that up either, because they have been good. So just inserting Matthews into the third line, I'm not saying giving him third line minutes. Again, we don't know what percentage of Matthews we're getting, and we don't know how much he can play or what he can do on the ice, but I would probably slot him in on the third line, and this can really mess up line matchups, especially on home ice for the Boston Bruins, right? So this is an absolute monkey wrench thrown into the mix here for not only the Leafs, but the Bruins. But I do think those lines are similar to what we'll see if he ends up playing tonight, just because you don't know what you have in him, and I wouldn't mess up the chemistry of the other lines that have been going the last two games.
Yeah, the biggest thing is, again, that's what everyone's kind of saying now, is that they've played so well without him. Will bringing him back in disrupt that? There's a chance, but he's obviously a 60-goal scorer. And you can see, that's kind of what Kyle Kushman was saying. He's like, keep rolling because it's been working. Matthews isn't coming back to immediate 20-plus minutes. And then that kind of begs the question of how healthy is he? We won't know, and we probably won't know until they get eliminated, because they're not going to give any hints to the Boston Bruins on whether or not he's going to be near 100%. But this also keeps Connor Dewar, David Camp, and Yorkrock in the lineup, so it keeps things kind of similar to what has been working, while also throwing a wrench in the Boston Bruins plans. And if you're the Bruins, they already have tons of pressure going into this Game 7. They're in front of their home crowd. Again, they'd be, like we mentioned in the last video, they'd be the first North American team to lose back-to-back 3-1 series, which would be hilarious in itself. But if you're the Leafs and you think it's 80% of Auston Matthews, maybe even 70%, I think they're going to throw him in there if it's not going to, if it's an injury, which again, we don't know what it is. We suspect it's a groin injury. It could be an illness, whatever it ends up being. We have faith in the medical staff that it won't hurt him further going forward into the rest of the playoffs or even the next series. But there's a lot of interesting and a bit scary if you're a Leafs fan too, because do you really want to mess up what's been working? And they have all the momentum coming in, but maybe Auston Matthews could give them another jump that they need to finally win another round one after doing it last year.
Yeah, I struggle with that thought too, where maybe you don't want to mess up the lines, but I think if you can insert Auston Matthews, into your lineup again, he's just such a good player that he just makes your team automatically better. I think that's a weird narrative to go out. Like if you can put Matthews back in the lineup, I think you do it, right? Like 10 times out of 10. So even if he's 50% of Matthews, right? Because obviously with his injury, it's bad enough that kept him out of the lineup. And we just saw like what the Tampa Bay Lightning went through, and they released their medical report through their playoff series. So a lot of guys are not playing healthy, and he probably wasn't playing healthy anyway. So for him to be kept out, it was something serious, right? So if he does come back, he's probably not even close to 100%, but he still has that skill set. And I think it could help the power play too, right? You got Nylander, you got everyone back in the mix. Maybe it does something to the power play. At some point, you have to break through. I mean, going 1 for 20 is so ridiculous. It doesn't even make sense. But you would hope that they have to break through, and he would definitely help the power play being another shooter. And he might take attention away from other players that could end up scoring too. So I think even if you use him as a decoy, like if he's 70%, like you said, he could just be a decoy out there, getting a lot of attention, double team, stuff like that, passes the puck away, and then you have more opportunities to score. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, no 100% confirmation yet, but it's a little exciting. It's tilting towards, yes, he's going to play.
Yeah, we'll probably know in about an hour or hour and 20 minutes as the time of recording. But the power play is the big thing. They have not, I mean, they've been historically bad on the power play this postseason. So bringing in a guy, the best goal scorer in the NHL, obviously can't hurt that, even if he's, I mean, I hope he's a bit better than 50%, but at this point we don't really know. We won't know. And it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens in 2 hours from now. This is the last tweet I'll show before we wrap it up. It says media in Boston say that Matthews arrived, like you mentioned earlier, on the first Leafs team bus to the rink, which usually transports the starters. And that's the biggest thing here, is that he hasn't done that all series, even though he was technically questionable for the last game and the game before. He hadn't been doing that in the past. And yeah, any final thoughts, Darius, before Game 7 is getting underway very shortly here?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad, if you can insert Matthews into the lineup, I don't think it's a bad thing. At the end of the day, yes, the story, if they do lose, is going to be a little off the walls concerning Matthews, that they insert him back into the lineup and they lose. But if you win, I think it just gives you a better chance to win, obviously. Like, you're inserting a 70 or almost 70 goal scorer back into your lineup, and he's going to take attention away from other guys, and I think it's a good thing. But the main thing for the Leafs to win this game is you have to continue to play like you were the last 2 games without Matthews. Keep the intensity high and try not to funnel too many passes and plays through him, because it's not going to work. He's obviously not 100%, and the Bruins are going to be covering him. So we're going to see what happens here. It's going to be interesting, and hopefully the Leafs slay the dragon.
Yeah, and hopefully they can continue to play the way they've been playing, despite, or whether Auston Matthews plays or not. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on that, and we will see you later today.